Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience. This episode is brought to you by Aisling Med Spa, the ultimate destination for those pursuing peak performance and optimal health and wellness. Aisling Med Spa offers popular services including light stim, red light therapy, vitamin injections, functional health assessments, custom IV therapy, rejuvenating facials, dermaplane, and much more. Whether you are an athlete looking to improve performance and recovery, or someone who just wants to improve their overall health and well-being, Aisling Med Spa has a solution for you. I've been a proud customer of Aisling Med Spa for over a year, and it's so much more than just your average med spa. It's been absolutely vital to my overall health and wellness and has completely leveled up my performance as well. Visit www.aislingmedspa.com and book your appointment today. Make sure to tell them that Bree sent you to receive 20% off of your first IV therapy. Located in New Melle, Missouri, Aisling Med Spa is your one-stop shop for your health and wellness needs. Today we have a very special guest. He fights in the featherweight division and he has an upcoming fight in Nemesis Fighting Alliance on March 1st. Not only does he have an upcoming fight, but he has been on a tear since he turned pro. He's actually 2-0 as a professional fighter, and he went 9-1 as an amateur as well. Both of his wins as a pro come by way of first round finish. So I'm very excited to see his next fight, and I'm very excited to talk to him and learn more about his career and how he got to this point. So let's go ahead and bring on Ray Hayes. What was your introduction to martial arts, and when did you kind of start training?
I was introduced as a kid. I grew up watching like WWE, and then as soon as I was getting to the age where I kind of understood that it was fake, I started watching Spike with my parents, and after that, that was kind of the introduction. And then throughout high school, I kind of tried like the regular sports, football, baseball. None of them really stuck because I wasn't a great athlete. And at 18, I started boxing. So it just from boxing to now.
Okay, so you actually started as a boxer before you went to MMA.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because I noticed you had a lot of submissions, so I would have guessed that you started with grappling, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I started boxing with Colton. Like I said, like when I was 18, I probably boxed for him for like a year and a half, and he got me a couple unsanctioned boxing matches at some shows. I 3-0 with 3 knockouts on those, and then after that, I started training MMA more and put a focus on that. Before I wanted to compete in like USA and Golden Gloves and stuff, but I started falling in love with MMA too fast, so we kind of forgot about the boxing.
Yeah, when did you kind of transition from MMA to boxing? So you started boxing at 18, and then when did you kind of shift to MMA?
Probably like early 19. I might have been late 18, but it was right around in there. After like a year of training boxing, Colton, he's a MMA fighter, did MMA his whole life. That's all my gym was really a jiu-jitsu gym, and we had a boxing and MMA program, but I was just around it all the time, and they just kind of pushed it on me, and I didn't have a choice. And I already like knew what it was and liked it, so just kind of came natural.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you train at, what's the name of your gym again?
Parabellum MMA.
Okay, awesome. And that's in Waynesville?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Is that kind of where you're from, out that way?
I'm from Lebanon.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
So not exactly down the street, but, you know, it's in Missouri.
Yeah.
A little bit of a drive, but that's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, so I noticed that I was curious because, like I said, I noticed that you had so many submissions, and I know your was the last one the Darce choke finish? Was that your last fight? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that was awesome. The way you set that up was beautiful. So I would have thought that you had been grappling for a lot longer, but how do you feel like starting off with boxing? I mean, every fight starts on the feet. Do you feel like that kind of gave you a good base for MMA?
Yeah, I think it depends how people do it. You know, you see a lot of guys late in their career, all these guys go into boxing and they get beat up because they can't translate it. And you see a lot of boxers that want to start MMA and they can't translate it. But I think starting it so early and getting into because the amateur MMA, a lot of guys are scared to get hit. They don't know what to do. But starting off boxing, I was able to stand there in front of people and I wasn't scared. I was able to keep a tight guard, roll with the punches and just had confidence in my hand. So I think it just built the underlying confidence that I can stand there and box with just about anyone. So
Oh yeah,
I think
absolutely.
starting it early made it a lot easier on me.
Yeah. Yeah, boxing sparring is no joke. I mean, it's hard. It's hard rounds, so yeah, you're definitely not as afraid to get hit coming from that as you would be probably coming from like a different background. So that's awesome. Very cool. So you mentioned, you started watching Spike and I guess you were watching like The Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that. Is that really like was there a moment where you were like, "Oh, I really want to do that. Like I really want to be a fighter." Was there a certain fighter that inspired you or what kind of pushed you a little bit to want to get into it?
I think it was just like a fight or anything like that. It was just like every weekend thing, like we had it in our house all the time. There wasn't a time where my dad wasn't wrestling me or putting me in arm bars or, pushing me around. It was like I was, fighting my dad and my brother every day. So I think I just got used to it being in my life and now I do it every day still. So
Yeah. Was your dad into martial arts too?
he never competed or anything like that, but he followed the sport pretty well.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it definitely helps. I mean, I feel like that is one thing that not all fighters do, but I feel like a lot of them do is studying the sport and following the sport. Do you feel like that's important to really kind of be a student of the game and really kind of study not only your opponents and what you've got going on, but also study the greats and watch, past fights and things like that?
Yeah, for me, I do that a lot. I'm constantly every Saturday or Friday night whenever there's local fights or MMA fights, I watch the whole card. I'm not one of those guys that just watch the main event. I'll watch early prelims to the end. I'm definitely watching all the time, I feel like, and then even when I get a fight for my opponents, I'll go back and I'll watch every single video they got multiple times and just put myself in the spots where I'm losing against them. I'll watch the fights they do good and I picture myself as the dude that's losing. So in my head, by the time it's fight time, I've lost to them 30 plus times. I've lost sleep to it. So I'm already accepted any kind of bad fate that could happen, that might happen, and I just do my best to not make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like too visualization is huge and the more you can kind of really picture yourself in those scenarios, the more prepared you are for it when it really happens. I mean, there's real science behind it. Like in visualizing competition and visualizing just like situations in life that you're going to face is it's huge. It makes a big difference. So, I definitely think that fighters who watch film and watch a lot of fights tend to do a little bit better in competition from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So, what is, I guess, your goal with fighting? I mean, are you like, eventually I want to go to the UFC, or do you kind of want to go a different direction? Or, everybody kind of has a different game plan in their mind. But obviously, there's a reason why you're doing this and doing it on a high level. So,
Yeah. I'm the end goal's gonna be the UFC just because to me that's how you made it. But
yeah.
as long as I become financially free with this and I can just focus on this, not have to worry about work, take care of a family, then that's cool with me. That's all I want to do. I just don't want to get stuck in the work life. Go to work, come home, go back to work. That's not what I want to do. So,
I hear you. I
yeah.
definitely feel that. Yeah. Yeah, how hard is it? I feel like it's something that a lot of fans don't think about or a lot of, non-MMA people, they don't think about like what actually goes on in a fighter's life and until you get to a lot of times until you get to like the top 15 in the UFC, like you might have a full-time job or a part-time job at least to support yourself. So like how challenging is that to kind of balance all the things that you have to balance in life along with fighting and
Yeah.
kind of keep it together?
Yeah, that's got to be one of the hardest things. I mean, trying to keep a connection with your family, your friends, especially coming right out of high school. This is a part where you lose a lot of friends, you lose family members that aren't close to you no more. So trying to keep that connection and then paying my bills, keeping my full-time job. I work 6 days a week, so it's,
Oh wow.
depends what day it is, where I'm at or how I'm training. And then I own a apartment complex, so I'm trying to get away from the job, maybe just focus on doing something like that. But that's just made me a landlord. So now I got to focus on running a apartment, going to my day job, and training. So yeah, it's normal life
It's
is
a
definitely
lot.
hectic. It's not just train and fight for sure.
Yeah, that is a lot. You got your hands full, man. Yeah, you must be exhausted. That's
Yeah.
crazy. But it'll all pay off. I feel like you're doing all the right things. You've got that goal in your mind of being financially free, and sometimes you just gotta sacrifice to get to that point, and sometimes you're gonna have to do a lot of things that don't make you any money for a long time. But then you get to the point where it all kind of comes to fruition, and if it pays off, man, it can pay off huge. So but that's
Yeah.
awesome that you've already kind of got a taste of, like you own your own apartment complex, and I'm sure that's a lot of work. But at the end of the day, you're still young and you're doing things like that. I think that's awesome. So very cool.
Yeah, I think everyone that I've talked to, whether it be just like a fighter that's, been to the highest level or like a guy that's really good with money who's made a lot of money, they're all this it's all the same way. They just say it's gonna suck. You're gonna be the same as everyone else. Every day is gonna be terrible, but if you keep showing up, you keep doing the right things, you keep following the path, you're gonna see results. So I do that with my daily life, with the apartment, everything, going to work. I do the same thing. I just keep showing up, and then with training, no matter how many times I show up and get beat up, I'm gonna be there the next day. If I win a fight on Saturday night, you're going to see me on the mats on Monday. That's just how it is.
Love it. That's a great mentality. Yeah, I feel like too that has got to be difficult. You're still young, and I feel like a lot of people that are around your age, they're not doing the things you're doing. They're
Yeah,
going to the bars, they're having fun, they're going to parties and all that stuff. Is
definitely.
Was that kind of a difficult adjustment for you to kind of see like what your friends are doing, and then like, hey, I'm over here, I'm doing something different? Were they kind of like, was it hard, or were they supportive of it?
some of them support, some of them, I don't really talk to, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of been the same way ever since I was even a little younger than this, 15, 16, everyone had a car and they were going out, doing all the things kids do. And I never really did any of that. I kind of just stuck to the path, got a job, stayed to myself. I just stayed disciplined this whole time. I've lost friends along the way, but when they're hitting me up wanting to go out on a Friday night to the club or Saturday or something, I'm going for a run. I'm going to the gym. I'm staying home. I don't need all that in my life yet.
Yeah, yeah, you got plenty of time to do that. After you win a world title, then
Yeah, yeah. I haven't done nothing to celebrate yet. That's what I keep telling myself. I've done nothing to celebrate.
I know. I have to tell myself the same thing. It's funny. Cuz well, I mean, when I was your age, I was doing all that stuff. So like, and I regret it. Like I wish I would have been, kind of more disciplined. I mean, I worked a lot, but I wasn't doing anything else besides work. It was like work hard, play hard kind of thing. And
Yeah,
now, and especially once I kind of got in like my mid 20s, I was like, oh man, I wasted so much time. Like, man, what was I doing?
yeah,
So just know you're doing the right thing. If you ever have
yeah.
those days where you get FOMO, just know, just know it'll all pay off, because I regret
Yeah.
it. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's awesome. And I know you had a pretty strong amateur career as well. I mean, you just turn pro last year in MMA?
Yeah, yeah. The end of
Okay,
last
that's what
year.
I thought. Yeah, so but before that you went 9-1 as an amateur. Do you feel like that experience as an amateur was important? Do you feel like that helped you, having 10 fights before you even get into your pro career? I know some people have different opinions on amateur and pro, but from what I've heard from a lot of fighters, they feel like that is the best thing to do to prepare you for your pro career.
Yeah, I thought I left all my matchmaking stuff to Colton. He kind of decided how I was taking fights, who I was fighting, and when it was going to happen. So I give all
Sure.
that to him, but I think the way he did it was perfect. I fought every time I was fighting, it was the number one dude in the Midwest. He was undefeated. He was a dude that nobody wanted to fight, and I'd fight those guys on 2, 3 weeks notice, and made a amateur career out of that. I did like 10 fights in a year, so I give all that to him. He really built me and got me there super fast to the level of where I was outclassing dudes that were should have been making it a dogfight. There's so many times where I went to the cage and everyone was super excited about this fight between me and whoever the number one featherweight or lightweight was, and I went out there and steamrolled him in under a minute. So I give all that to him. That's all of his preparation and his matchmaking, really.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot different now too for, you know, fighters beginning their pro career, because from the coaches I've talked to and fighters I've talked to, it just seems like now it's a lot easier, not easier, but like there's less experience required. I feel like before you can go into the UFC as a pro. I mean, we see 5-0, 7-0 guys getting signed to the UFC now, especially from Contender Series. So it just seems like, I don't know, it seems like you used to have a lot more experience, you know, even just like a few years ago to get to the UFC. So I feel like that amateur career is kind of more important now than it ever has been, just because, you know, you don't want to make those mistakes as a pro and then jeopardize getting into the UFC. And if you make those mistakes as an amateur, then, you know, you're going to be you're going to be a lot better off because it doesn't count, you know.
Yeah,
So I feel like that's like, I don't know, that's one thing I feel like that's kind of changed in MMA. And of course, this sport is so young, so it changes constantly. But that's one thing I've noticed.
yeah, yeah. I feel like there's a lot more avenues for early younger fighters to get into the UFC quicker, even when they're not as polished as they should be already.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've seen some, I mean, everybody that won on the Contender Series this year got signed. And I don't know that I've ever seen that happen. It was kind of surprising, but when you think about it, now you've got PFL and you've got even bare knuckle boxing is kind of stealing some talent now. So it's like
Yeah.
they want to keep as much talent as they possibly can. I guess it makes sense so they can keep putting on all these events.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you about is, you obviously in your pro career and even in your amateur career, you had a very high finish rate. Now you have 100% finish rate off, you know, your 2 fights, and both of them are first round finishes. So do you feel like that is something that is kind of just, you know, like when you get in there, like you just have the intention to like get your opponent out of there and hurt them and get them out of there as soon as possible? Or is that something that you just kind of, you know, you get in there and whatever happens, happens? Or what do you think that comes from?
I think that goes back to the game plan with me and Colton. The wavelength that we're on is crazy. We'll go through a whole fight camp talking about just one combination or one setup that we're gonna do, and then come fight night, I do it. I think that's just what it is. The way we set up fights and the way we find people's weaknesses and exploit them is next to none in this regional scene right now. I've done it better than anyone, I think. But that also, just like the starting off the boxing, like a lot of guys aren't putting hands on people the way I am. I'm not out there to touch spar you or like the Taekwondo style where they want to get points or kickbox you. That's not going to happen. I'm in there to separate you from your consciousness as quick as I can, whether it's with my hands or you're trying to take me down and I take your neck. It's either way. I'm not trying to fight you for what, 15 minutes would be a whole fight for me. Yeah, that just sounds terrible. I'm not trying to fight anybody for that long. So yeah, no. As soon as I can get out of there, that's the easy way for me.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the biggest things you've been working on with like your style? I mean, obviously you started as a boxer and then you started doing jiu-jitsu and kind of putting it all together. But I guess what's one thing that you feel like you've improved on the most since you've become pro?
Probably just my overall IQ. I would get caught in things that I should never got caught in, or I would get lost in grappling transitions when I had easy ways out. And I've kind of opened up the paths. You know, I can read the map better when I get in there. I know the directions to go. So I say it's just that knowing where to go and what to do in certain situations.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like fighting is obviously it's physical. I mean, it's a sport, but it's so mental. And, you know, especially with how fast paced it is, it's if you make one little mistake, I mean, you could literally just end up ruining your whole fight. So it's
Yeah,
like those little things that you have to pay attention to and that you have to think about when you're in there. And of
yeah,
course, you've got your adrenaline pumping. So that makes it even more Even more
Yeah,
challenging.
there was a lot of fights and situations where I wouldn't know what I was doing next. Like I would get lost and I would look over for the corner and need some advice. And I hated that. That was like one of the biggest things that I hated. I don't want to be in there and have to, freak out and guess of what I'm gonna do or what he's doing. So I want to know kind of if he does this, I do this, and plan A, B, C. So I've kind of got a better grasp of that, of where things go, and I'm just gonna shut everything down from there on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially, you get to the point where, maybe you're in a situation where you can't finish somebody, and then, that's where the fight IQ really comes in, because you have to be like, okay, well, you know what? I lost this first round. What adjustments do I need to make sure that if I don't get this finish, that I'm going to win on the scorecards? Because, if the fight's close, it could easily go to the wrong person. So, like,
Yeah,
you have to really make sure that you're winning those rounds in there, and still digging for the finish too, of course. But some people, man, they're just like, they won't go down.
yeah,
It can be challenging. Like, I was watching the fights last night, and there were some fights where, like in the Robert Whitaker fight, there was like a time or two where I thought Whitaker was like about to get finished. And then he ended up winning the fight. And then Mackenzie Dern, I thought she was going to get
that was
finished too.
crazy.
It was insane.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
Kenzie
was
Dern's
that
a
was a
dog.
great fight. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah. And I knew she was, but I was expecting, because Lemos is so powerful. I was like, man, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know if she's going to be able to handle that if she gets rocked by Lemos. And
yeah,
I mean, they were close to stopping the fight. So,
definitely. Yeah, two or three more punches and that one was over for sure.
yeah, that was crazy. Well, that's where her jiu-jitsu comes in. She takes it to the ground, and then she's out of the danger zone. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
that was awesome. That was a great fight. That whole card was really fun, actually. I enjoyed all those fights.
I did too.
Um,
Yeah,
I would say the only fight that I didn't really like was the Neil versus Gary fight. I
yeah,
feel like that one
that
was a
was
little
different.
weird. Yeah, it
Mm,
was just weird. Like, they kept, like, I don't know, like high-fiving each other, or like dabbing each other. And I was like, what?
yeah,
I was like, what is
that was
going on
weird.
here?
Gary
Yeah.
did a good job taking Neil's like violent explosiveness out of it. I think
Yeah.
doing that also helped. It kind of sidetracked him from being the aggressive killer that Neil is, and I think that would have helped him a lot more if he was really trying to hurt Gary. The little dab
Yeah.
ups, the running away, circling, that stuff helps you from getting caught by somebody like Neil.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought Ian Gary fought smart. I mean, obviously, it wasn't the most entertaining fight in the world. I did think he won the fight. I know there was a little controversy. Some people thought Neil won. I thought it was pretty clear that Gary won. But yeah, it was just, I mean, not a lot happened in the fight. It wasn't super, neither one was super active, but I feel like Gary was just trying to avoid getting clipped, so it's probably smart.
Yeah,
Because Neil, he, like, when he hits you, it's, yeah, I mean, you could go down easily. He's got a lot of power in his hands. So
yeah,
yeah, that was fun. But I was so sad to see Volkanovski lose. Man, that was,
yeah.
I'm
That
probably
was
gonna be
rough.
depressed all week.
That was rough. That was rough.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan of Volkanovski. He's just, I don't know. I mean, even besides the featherweight division, just overall, one of my favorite fighters that's ever been in the UFC at this point. And
Definitely.
yeah, he's great. I feel like he should probably take a little time off. I think that would be good for him. I don't think he wants to, but I
Yeah.
think that would be good for him. And then I think when he comes back, if he takes some time off, I think he'll be back in the win column, I think.
For
Depending on
sure.
the
Yeah.
matchup. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's still got a lot of time left in his career too. Even though, he jokes about the old man thing, which I thought was awesome. I
Yeah.
think it's fun. I mean, what do you think about, like, there's so many different personalities in fighting. I feel like some people, they think you should be like more respectful and just whatever, like GSP kind of, or you should be like loud and you should be crazy. I personally think you should just be you, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just I'm not here to entertain nobody. I'm just here to win fights. So if I entertain
Yeah.
you with the shit I say, that's just because you like me, I guess. I'm not trying to be a Colby Covington or anything like that. Just to sell fights. So
Yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, and it does work for some people. I mean, for Ilya Taporia, it aged beautifully.
yeah,
But that could have worked the other way around if he lost. I mean, that would have been
definitely,
so
yeah,
embarrassing.
yeah, yeah,
But I feel like if yeah, I mean, sometimes it can work, especially if you win your fights, if you finish fights. Because like Ian Gary, he's not really finishing fights, so I feel like that's why it's kind of backfiring for him. Like he's not having these like super like blowing people out of the water performances lately. But I feel like if you're yourself, it kind of like lasts longer. Like your success lasts longer when you're just you.
yeah,
Like, you see fighters who they say stuff that's funny and entertaining. Like Habib, he used to say stuff that was funny all the time, but unintentionally. And,
hmm,
he would say things that we get, clickbait and all that. But I don't think you have
yeah,
to like try to do that. I think that it just will happen. And then
yeah,
your skills are going to speak for themselves, and that's what people are
for
really going
sure,
to remember you for. Yeah,
definitely, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and it's I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I do think it is good to like show your personality and like obviously, you want people to watch your fights and you want eyeballs on it. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's like, yeah, you're already, sacrificing so much and training so hard and doing so much just to make that walk that it's like, do we really expect these people to be entertainers too?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like this isn't reality TV. Like this isn't, in the WWE, okay, sure, but in real fighting in the UFC and MMA, yeah, I don't think you have to do that for
yeah.
sure.
I think it goes back to people's purpose. What are they there for? Are they there to be
Yeah.
famous and make a lot of money? Are they there to hurt people? Are they there to just be one of the greats? And that'll all show out on how they act. So people like Volk and Robert Whitaker, they're obviously not there for the fame or the paycheck. They're there to just make a statement and be in the record book. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, Robert Whitaker looked great. I mean, he did get caught a couple times, which I kind of expected just because Costa has so much power. But man, he looked great. I mean, I don't know what happened in the DDP fight. I feel like I don't know, he kind of got a little overwhelmed. But Costa arguably has more power than DDP. And yeah, so it was kind of a little surprising. But at the same time, Robert Whitaker, I'm never surprised to see him kind of put on a clinic like that.
definitely.
Yeah, it was good to see him get back in the win column for sure. I am
Hmm.
glad that it was competitive though, because I like both of them, and I was hoping that Costa would get a win too. So I was like, I hope both of them win.
Yeah. Hmm.
But no, it was good. It was a good fight. But I was curious too, like, what do you think is like? There's a lot of conversation about like what's the best space for MMA. Is it wrestling? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it kickboxing? Like, do you think there is really a best space for MMA, or do you think it's better to just like be well-rounded and kind of be good at everything?
Yeah, I think like if you're asking that 5 to 10 years ago, it's wrestling. Clearly, there
Yeah.
was so many wrestling champions that was dominating the sport, but now there's everyone in the top five is different. You look at the featherweight top five. You got Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega, Josh Emmett, Volk, and Taporia. Those guys are so much different. Each one of those guys is stylistically a different nightmare. So I think it's just the person now, just being well rounded and being at that level.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it used to be that a lot of fighters didn't have the jujitsu experience too, where like I remember when Hoist Gracie was fighting and he would just go in there and submit people easily. And I feel like the more the sport has evolved, the more that fighters have learned, some submission defense and have learned, sprawls and takedown defense and have gotten better at that to where, they don't need to necessarily be a high level black belt on the ground in order to survive and to be able to compete with somebody who is. I mean, we kind of saw that with Dern versus Lemos. I mean, Dern is one of the highest level black belts in jiu-jitsu in the UFC. And Amanda Lemos, she's got good grappling too, but she's not quite there. Probably not even close to Dern's level of jiu-jitsu. But she was able to survive and she was able to hang. And I feel like that kind of, if that fight would have happened, like you said, if that would have happened 5-10 years ago, Dern probably would have submitted her in the first round. But I feel like now it's just the sport has evolved so much that you almost have to be good everywhere to be able to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's I don't know. I feel like it's good that the sport has evolved the way it has. The fights are getting more technical, but also I feel like it's easier to get in the UFC, but I think the only reason why is because they put on so many more events now than they used to. I feel like that has a lot to do with it, because when you think about it, I mean, they didn't used to do events every weekend. That was crazy. So now, and they're doing full, there's anywhere from 10 to 15 fights usually on each event. So to do that every single weekend, you've got to have a pretty hefty roster and to be able to match, in all those different divisions. And it's crazy. I feel like that's one thing too with the local scene that kind of makes it more difficult sometimes, is especially with certain divisions, it can be so hard to match fighters on a local level and even on a regional level. Like women's MMA especially is difficult to match on a local level because there's just not as many fighters available. And then when you have like the flyweight division too, and men's and heavyweight, I feel like those are kind of more difficult to match. I don't know. What do you think about that with the local scene?
Yeah, I think I've seen it. We just run out of people to fight, and by the time you cross train or you beat a couple guys at a certain gyms, the rest of them don't want to fight you or they want to train with you. So I mean, I think the best option is just fighting guys out of state. We need to fly more guys in, fly ourselves out more. That's the best option. If you're in a small community like around here in the middle of the Midwest, there's a few gyms in every couple of hours. There's not very many big high level gyms here, so we don't really want to grow up beating each other and hating each other. So I think it'd be better if we come together, train together, and we go fight the dudes that are outside of this area and beat those guys up and help each other get there instead of getting each other's way.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really think about that too much either, but yeah, you don't really see that as often, is flying people in, or even we see it sometimes. I think they just announced Lucas Clay is going to be fighting Cage Warriors.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's going to be in the UK. So stuff like that. That's awesome. Yeah, that's crazy. So I feel like more of that would be would be cool. And I feel like too, it would help you kind of prepare better for, if you did go to the UFC, because when you go to the UFC, you're not going to be fighting in your backyard. You're going to be fighting most likely in Vegas or across the country, across the world. So yeah, that's a good point. I feel like that would be cool to see, maybe like a champion from another, local scene kind of fighting a champion from our local scene. I think that would be awesome. And then it's less St. Louis versus St. Louis, and it's more St. Louis versus somewhere else.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I never noticed that, but that is true, because there is a lot of rivalry, and there's a lot of fighters that are fighting each other that used to train together, or they fight. I
don't know how many gyms I've been in where I just fought the dude 2 weeks ago, and I'm training, training with him, and his coaches are coaching me, and it's built for an awkward environment. I mean, some people treat it right, and they're cool with it. I'm down at Fight Club every Friday now, and I've fought one of their guys, and I think 4 or 5 of our guys have fought them. And every time we just pull away from our camp a little bit, create a little bit of space, and they fight, and then we get back to training together. So, I mean, we make it work, but in an ideal situation, we get camps together and we don't have to do that. But when you run out of guys in the local scene, stuff happens, but we definitely just try to make the most out of it for sure without hating
Oh
each other.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that'd be hard because it's like, yeah, I mean, you're a respectful person. You know, you don't seem like a jerk, but it's like at the end of the day, you're fighting somebody. And, you know, all the great fighters that I've talked to, you know, when they get in there, they're not there to have a sparring match. Like, they're in there to hurt
Yeah,
that person. So it's just, yeah, it's hard. It would be
yeah,
hard for me to, like, think about somebody and then, oh, we've trained together. Oh, now I'm going to fight you. Like, and not, you know, kind of have a negative attitude
yeah,
towards
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be tough. That would be
yeah.
tough. I
It's
mean, it would be
weird for
different if
sure.
it was like exhibition matches or like, you know, if it was like your first few fights in the amateur scene, that's one thing. But once you go
Hmm.
pro, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this isn't a game. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
that's cool. Well, let's say, you know, with a win in Nemesis on March 1st, you know, do you have like an idea of what direction you want to go, or are you just kind of like rolling with the punches here?
Yeah, I don't. It's like I said, it's all Colton. I'm managed by Jackson Wink, so they get a lot of fight offers for me all the time, and they send them
Oh,
down to
nice.
Colton, and Colton kind of ciphers through them and just lets me get the ones that make sense. But yeah, that's basically it. Whatever Colton finds, guys are hitting Colton up all the time. They're hitting Jackson Wink up all the time. Whichever ones get to me and hit my desk, I'll sign. You know, that's all it is for me. I don't. They take the stress completely out of it for me. I don't have to worry about who I'm going to fight next until it's time.
That's good. Yeah, that's got to take a huge load off of you, not having to think about that and stress about that for sure.
Yeah,
I know that that's one part of fighting that would just drive me insane is the matchmaking and just like fights falling through constantly. Like God, I would
yeah. Colton calls me
that would drive
sometimes
me
with some of the
crazy.
crazy stuff he deals with, but I just push it off. I'm like, dude, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know the offers because they offer some crazy stuff all the time. And if it was just me, I'd be taking plane rides and fighting across the world every chance I got. So he ciphers it, make sure it's safe, and make sure it's right and everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I saw this thing floating around that was like this is what your promoter texts you, and it was just like, hey, we got this guy. And it's like somebody that's like undefeated, and it's like you have to cut 30 pounds on 2 days notice.
Yeah, yeah, he ciphers through that shit. Yeah.
Like you're crazy. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, that happens all the time. It happens all the time. And I feel like that
Yeah.
actually can be a huge detriment to a fighter's career. I know a lot of really talented fighters that just took the wrong fights and took short notice fights that were not smart to take and really kind of screwed themselves. So it's important having that. It's very important having good management and having, good options for who you actually are going to fight. So that way you don't end up, fighting some undefeated Sambo wrestler on 2 days notice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Crazy stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I've seen some crazy last minute matchups where I was just like, what? I'm like, this makes no sense. Like even when I was watching UFC last night, like the Delima fight with Junior
Yeah,
Tafa. I mean, man, what a
that was
gangster taking a
rough.
fight that what was it, one not even a whole day notice for his brother.
Yeah,
But even looking at the matchup with Justin Tafa, I'm like, man, this just looks like a mismatch almost. Because Delima has so much experience, and yeah, I was
yeah,
I was kind of surprised even with the initial matchup, and then when Junior filled in, I was like, oh god, I'm like, this ain't gonna be good.
yeah. That was rough.
Yeah, he took his leg for his brother, literally. So. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a nice brother. That's a
yeah.
solid brother right there.
He gonna be waiting on him for the whole couple weeks now, bringing him food and stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I definitely would. Yeah, if that was my
yeah,
brother, I'd be like, yeah, you're gonna be my maid for the next 2 weeks for sure.
definitely have to.
That's funny. Well, so your last fight was not too long ago. It was what, in mid-January, late January?
Yeah, it was late January.
Nice. So quick turnaround, but how excited are you to get back in there?
Yeah, I mean, I was bugging Colton the Monday after we got out of there. I was like, let's turn this around, do something quick. So he got on every promotion around the area that was having shows and put my name in and came up with Nemesis for this. But yeah, I'm not trying to sit around. Like I said, I did 10 fights in a year as an amateur. I'm growing
Oh
so much. I'm
wow.
on the mat so much. There's no reason that I should be sitting around waiting months to fight until I, hit a spot where I'm not winning or these fights are getting harder. Then I'm gonna keep cranking them out as long as I can continue training and I'm healthy.
That's awesome. I think that's a great mentality. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when you hit a higher level, then you definitely have to take more time, with your training camps, and you want to make sure, and of course, make sure you're not injured or anything like that. But
Yeah,
and if you're winning, if you're getting them out over with quickly, then yeah, I mean, be as active as you can. And keep winning
yeah,
because momentum is one thing that I feel like is very important in this sport. I see it all the time with fighters, not only when they're losing, but also just when they're not active, what it does mentally. It can be difficult. I feel like, a lot of fighters, sometimes they just have a hard time getting fights, especially if they have like a really strong background in a certain, discipline from before MMA, like if they're a high level jujitsu black belt or, Olympic gold wrestler, like something like that, then obviously it's going to be hard for them to get fights. But
yeah,
yeah, I feel like a lot of times when fighters stay active, as long as they're not getting knocked out or anything, or taking a bunch of damage, I feel like it can
yeah,
help you because when you build that momentum, then it kind of helps you in your next fight, and then you keep building on it,
yeah.
so on and so forth.
It helped me a lot as an amateur because a lot like as you're early in your career, you get the nerves and you get all the excitement and you go out there and you'll make mistakes because you're so nervous. But I was literally fighting. I would fight a Saturday and then next Saturday I'd fight again. So it was like another day, just a different crowd. I just walked out there and it was fine. It was like sparring or something. But so I think that also helps being active. It keeps the nerves, the ring rust. It keeps any kind of different possibilities of weird things happening. If you're in shape all the time and you're training all the time, as long as you can be active and you're healthy, then do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like your experience in your amateur career kind of helped you with the nerves in dealing with kind of getting ready to make the walk and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. There was like a 4 fight stretch in the middle of that where it was like those 4 or 5 fights that I did in like 3 months. So after that, even when I had the long layoff and I took the later fights, the nerves just weren't there. I didn't feel the same way I did before. I'm cool with it now. I'm not shaking. I'm not jumping around. Me and Colton are normally laughing or watching videos in the back before I go out. Where the nerves are gone. I'm cool with anything that happens now.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed you are pretty tall for the featherweight division. That's why I wasn't sure if you were lightweight or featherweight.
Yeah.
So most of your fights have been at featherweight, is that correct?
I had 2 AMI fights at featherweight and then 1 pro fight, but most of my fights were at
Oh, okay.
lightweight. I had 2 at welterweight. But yeah,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
yep.
So do you feel like featherweight is going to be your division?
Yeah, yeah. I'm the like at lightweight. It depends who I fight. I'm normally not the biggest or strongest there, but at featherweight, I'm 6'1" and I'm stronger than just about everyone I grab a hold of. So I'm gonna stick to featherweight for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can make the weight and you don't have any problems there, then yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
is how is the weight cutting, cuz you're coming from, you started with the boxing background. Was that kind of an adjustment for you? Is like kind of, cutting down to 145? I mean, how was that experience when you first started doing that?
yeah. So I didn't cut any weight until my second MMA fight. My first AMI was at 170, short notice. I was supposed to fight at 55, and the day of switched to 170, and I fought somebody different, so I didn't have to cut any weight. And so 155 on my second one was the first time I cut weight, and I had no idea what I was doing. It was just my coaches are all wrestlers. Everyone around me would wrestle before, so they kind of helped me with it. But I've kind of just taken notes from everybody that I've been around. I had no clue what I was doing when I first started. I was doing it the wrong way. Like I said, I was fighting on week's notice, so I was cutting weight any way I could. But now we've kind of got it down. Even this fight's still kind of short notice. I took it on like 2.5, 3 weeks notice, so that's still shorter than most time. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've got the weight cutting dialed in better. I used to, if you try to make me make 45 back then, it wasn't going to happen. So we've kind of slowly figured it out for my body.
Yeah, I feel like too, it depends on the fighter. I mean, some fighters, the weight comes off so easily, and then other fighters, not so much. So,
Yeah,
sometimes you got to tweak things, and it can be tricky. But I feel like that is too why wrestlers a lot of times have an easier time in MMA because of the weight cutting aspect. I feel like that is one thing that they really have dialed in
definitely.
with wrestlers. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a gym full of wrestlers, and every time we're fighting together and it's weight cut time, they're always going to their weight cut lighter. They're always having an easier time. I'm always the one, dragging at the end of it. So I can definitely see they're better at it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like they can just cut insane amounts of weight. I don't know how they do it. I just it makes me exhausted just thinking about it, but it's part of
Yeah,
being a fighter. Man, now, I mean, you got so many fighters that are fighting at, featherweight and walking around at like 180 pounds, and it's crazy how much the weight cutting has gotten to a point where it's just almost like a little much. It's like borderline too much at this point, I feel like. In the
yeah,
UFC at least.
definitely.
Yeah, on the local scene I feel like it's not as bad. But there's still fighters that fight locally and they're cutting a lot of weight.
Hmm.
But I think that speaks to how much the sport has evolved too in the amateur scene. I was just talking about this with Dakota. The amateur scene has gotten so much more evolved, and you see fighters that are training on a much higher level than they used to as an AMI. And I feel like now it's just like they're almost training like pros. They're just not pros yet. And
Yeah, that's one of the things I can contest to with the way my amateur career went. I felt like I was training at such a high level. Like we built the MMA team just based off a few of our guys. We didn't have one beforehand, so it was just Colton, and we were learning from Colton. And Colton was such a high level at the time, and we were so low that I got there so quick to a level that was way past any of the dudes that I was fighting, and I didn't know it. And it just kind of came out in every single fight and showed.
yeah, I feel like that's huge too, is surrounding yourself with people who are on a higher level than you are is really, really important, because you're
Hmm.
only going to get to the level that is the highest level that you're around. So if you're around a
Yeah,
bunch of fighters that are barely, making it on the amateur scene, then yeah, I mean, you're probably gonna stay there. But if
yeah,
you're around high level pros, then just being around that mindset, I feel like
hmm,
that has to be super, super helpful.
yeah. That's why me especially out of my gym, cross train a lot. I'm at Fight Club every Friday. Marshall Kemp and Billy Wilson sparring, and then I'll go up to. I just went up to St. Charles last week. I'm up there sparring those guys. I go to the pit with Collier and Jacob Hiley. I'm down there with those guys. I go up to the Wolves Den. I am everywhere. Any time of the week you call me, I'm probably not in my home gym. There's a good chance that I'm not there training. It's just Mondays and Wednesdays are normally my main days where I'm in there. I'm getting to working with those guys. I'm doing my jiu-jitsu classes. But any other day of the week, you call me and I'm taking someone else's coach and absorbing knowledge from them too. So I'm
That's
definitely a
awesome.
product, I feel like, of the Midwest instead of just my gym. I've learned so much from everyone.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm glad to see more of that happening now. I mean, like we were kind of talking about earlier, it's kind of like a lot of rivalries here, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's getting better. It's getting to the point where, like I see people going over to Wolves Den all the time. I train at ES, and I see people from our gym going to Wolves Den all the time, and they're coming here, and vice
Hmm.
versa. Like it's good to see, because at the end of the day, I think that St. Louis does have a lot of potential to be a hub for combat sports, but it's not going to get there unless, we do have more of that collaboration and where it's St. Louis against everybody instead of St. Louis against St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see more of that for sure.
I can say all the coaches around here are super cool. I mean, Fight Club, the church, Wolves Den, St. Charles, every single one of them have texted me in my DMs, opening the door, inviting me, offering me gas money, the whole 9 yards. They're definitely for it. It's just getting everyone on the same page at the same time, I guess. But it's happening.
Definitely.
It's happening, slowly happening. I'm part of it. I've seen it in the room, so
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see it, and I feel like now is such a huge pivotal time for St. Louis combat sports. I mean, even just like looking at March alone, like we're kicking off March with the Nemesis card, and then we've got, I think there's a Synergy card later that month too. Or maybe a couple Synergy cards, and then the stand-up fight series, which I think has been really, really cool. And that, to me, I feel like, obviously there's no MMA in that. I mean, it's literally called stand-up. But I feel like that is really good to draw people into combat sports that maybe haven't really been into it. Because sometimes it's hard to take somebody straight into MMA who's never watched any combat sports because they're not going to understand the grappling unless they have some kind of wrestling background or they train jiu-jitsu. But I feel like people who don't train or, they don't really know much about it, I feel like starting with something like Muay Thai and kickboxing is a perfect way to introduce them to combat sports and to help fill, these venues. Because, that at the end of the day is what's going to help us grow this scene is if we're filling out these venues and selling out shows. So I think that'll really help. And having, this show at the Armory, I think is awesome. I don't think they've ever done any combat sports there that I know of.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Definitely.
I've never been there, but I've heard it's really cool. So.
Me either, yeah. Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I feel like that too definitely helps get people there because, if you have it at like some random gymnasium, like you're not going to get as much of a crowd, I guess, as you would as doing it somewhere like that. So maybe, more people kind of come in and watch, which would be awesome. So I'm excited.
I fought on their ballpark card, and it's probably one of my favorite venues that I've fought on. So I definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah. When was that? The one you fought on? Was that like last year?
It was last year. Yeah. Later last year. It was a couple months before I went pro. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I know I went to the one, when was it? I think it was December.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was December, I think, because Jesse Martinelli was in the main event.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first one that I went to, so I haven't been to any of the other ones. So this will be my second show.
I gotcha, yeah.
So I'm really excited. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I think I fought for Nemesis 4 or 5 times now. I want to say I fought for them almost more than any other promotion, I think.
Nice. So, yeah, as an amateur.
Definitely enjoy them, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Now you're coming back as a pro, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you feel about fighting on the same card with Dakota? I mean, he's literally been in the UFC, so he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, that's amazing. When they called and offered it, I was like, that's a dope card to be a part of. I've been in the room with Dakota a few times, whether it be at the pit with him and Collier or up at St. Charles in the wrestling room. I've been in there a few times, and the levels are insane for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to have fighters like him in St. Louis because, I mean, I think it was January. It was January when we had 2 fighters from St. Louis on the card in Canada. We had Garrett Armfield and Sean Woodson. So I think it'd be really cool if one day we had a UFC card in St. Louis and like where a lot of the fighters on the card were actually from here. I think that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. They did it
Hopefully
in
one day.
KC. Yeah, in KC like a couple years ago, maybe last year or the year before, they had the KC show, and that's when dude the promoter of Synergy retired from the UFC. Sam or Zach Cummings, he retired that night,
Oh
so he got
yeah.
to fight in his front of his home crowd and stuff. So yeah, something like that in St. Louis would be cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, do you consider yourself more Kansas City or St. Louis, cuz you're kind of like out there.
Yeah,
So,
I'm like neither probably. I'm
yeah.
not the big city guy. Yeah, I'm the redneck of the group. Yeah, I'm out there.
That's cool. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I feel like that's cool though, cuz like I mean Dakota's kind of from the middle of nowhere a little
Yeah, he
bit
is.
like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's
definitely.
cool. I like seeing that because it's a cool story when you can go from being from a small town and then make it all the way to the UFC. I mean, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean, like Bryce Mitchell talks about it all the time. Like nobody thought I could make it.
yeah, yeah. I was
And I mean,
training with
man,
Dakota and them in the pit. Like as as young as I did it early in my amateur career. Was the first time Colton brought me down there and let me train with him, and that like
yeah,
opened my eyes because when he said it's a 15 by 10 garage, that's what it was. You know, my home gym was bigger than it, and it blew my mind that there was two UFC fighters in this garage. So definitely
yeah.
anyone can make it for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and now he's training at ATT with absolute killers. So man, that's awesome. I'm really excited to see because he said he's only been training down there I think for a year now. So I'm sure his game has evolved a lot since then.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see it. Do you think that's something that at some point you would feel like you need to do or you have the desire to do is like go train at like one of these really big gyms where they have like multiple champions and it's like basically like a factory of UFC fighters.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. Like I said, I'm signing with Jackson Wink, so I've talked to them recently about getting down there, and it's kind of I'm planning on doing it after this fight as long as I don't get anything booked. I think I'm going to take a couple
Sure.
weeks and go down there. But it's been on the
Nice.
table. They've offered it plenty of times of just with life and work and stuff I couldn't get away. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely I'll be down there, and then later on in my career, any one of them, I'll go to and maybe make a home at one eventually.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, Jackson Wink, man, I mean, look at how many champions have come out of that gym. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's huge. That would be awesome. And a lot warmer down there. Do you like warm weather or what do
No,
you
yeah,
think?
definitely. Yep.
Well,
100% warm
perfect.
weather. Yeah.
Yeah, especially now, man, I'm tired of this cold. I'm
Yeah.
done.
I'm sick of
Snow.
it.
Yeah, I'm done with it. I'm done. I
Yeah.
can't do it anymore. I'm tapped out.
For sure.
Well, do you have any hobbies outside of fighting? I mean, gosh, you have so much on your plate. I can't imagine you really have time for anything else, but is there anything
Yeah.
else that you're passionate
I
about?
live I live really close to the lake, so
Nice.
anytime during the summer I'm normally on the lake. We're either bow fishing or fishing, swimming, tubing, whatever. But times like these when it's like fight camp and I'm not doing anything, I'm just coming home, video games, bed. So I'm a gamer, I guess you could say.
I feel like that's like every fighter now is
Yeah.
like they come home and play video games and go to bed. But
You know,
it's a great way to wind down, honestly.
it,
I don't hate
yeah.
getting on some GTA at night before I go to bed.
Yeah, it keeps you kind of out of trouble, and it's recovery
Yeah.
time. Is what I call it. I'll either ice myself or tape up ice to the legs or shoulders or something, and play games and get ready for bed. So
Nice. Yeah, that's the fighter life.
yeah,
Not a
definitely.
whole lot else.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
thank you.
I'm super excited to see your fight. I'm pretty sure it'll be the first time I've seen you fight in person. So,
Sweet.
yeah, super excited. But is there anything else that you want to talk about, or anything else that you want to leave the audience with before we go?
No, I don't think so. Two short weeks.
Yeah,
That's all it
yeah,
is. Yeah.
definitely. Awesome. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great chatting with you and kind of learning more about where you came from and how you became a fighter. Yeah, like I said,
Thank
really,
you.
really excited to see your next performance. And I mean, getting a win here, you get to 3-0, and then who knows where we'll see you just in the next couple years? Because yeah, did you say you had 10 amateur fights in 1 year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
So
10.
you could progress very quickly. So that's
Yeah.
very, very interesting. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I will let you get back to your day. I'm sure you have plenty of things to do. So I will let you get back to it. But thank you again. And I will talk to you soon, and I'll see you at the fights.